What's good, everyone? I'm basketball mentor Tyler Matthews. I played all 4 years varsity, went D3, and I broke records at my high school. And today I'm going to show you how I structured all my workouts throughout the year, right? We're going to talk about the off season, the preseason, the season, and the postseason. So think of this as a year guide of how you should structure your workouts, or how I structured my workouts, and how you guys can maybe take some of the stuff I did and apply it to your game. So the first thing we're going to cover is the off season, because it's August 15th, and so technically we're still in the off season, and we're going to be talking about like the focuses and all that stuff to begin with. So the off season, just to clarify, this is June, July, and August for the most part. Obviously, you guys can start fall league as soon as late August, but usually fall league for high school teams starts in September and October. And if you're in college, well, depending on what level you play at, if you're D1 or D2, you might be doing your off-season program with your team June, July, and August. And then preseason comes, it switches up a bit. So we're going to be talking about the focuses of each kind of off-season, preseason, season, and postseason. And we're going to be talking about some key factors and some key things you want to change in between those seasons, and how you guys can benefit from that, and how you can really work out all year long without burning out, staying healthy, and slowly increasing, right? Because we don't want to just get better in the off season. We want to get better throughout the year so that we can beat our peers, right? So we can outperform our teammates and all that stuff. Obviously not in a bad way, but in a competitive way. Of course, we want to get better every day and all that stuff. So in the off season, our focus should be improving our weaknesses, getting stronger, getting more athletic, really dialing in on the skills that we need to improve on. And so when I was going through the off season, the way I would improve my weaknesses is just like plan. And so we're going to get into that in the postseason, but in the postseason, you should be planning of like, okay, well, and reflecting, well, what did I do good in the season? What did I do bad in the season? What were my stats? What spots did I shoot bad from? What spots did I shoot good from? And stuff like that. So when we're improving our weaknesses, we have to first analyze and reflect on what our weaknesses actually are. So we're going to take some examples, right? Let's just say I'm a driver, I'm a finisher, I'm a good playmaker, but I suck at shooting. My three-point percentage for the year was, let's just say 27%, right? And so we'll write that down. Weakness equals 27% three-point shooter, and then what's it called? We'll say bad defender, right? We didn't slide our feet. We didn't have good help side for whatever reason, right? It doesn't matter, as long as we just use this as an example. So using those weaknesses, we would plan our off-season workouts. So let's just say it's May and we're about to go into June. As a basketball player, I would think, okay, if I know my weaknesses, I'm a bad shooter and I'm a bad defender, then I'm going to structure my workouts based on those weaknesses. So if going into the week, I would say, okay, well, starting June 1st, Monday through Saturday, I'm going to make sure to get 200 makes in from the three-point line. Not just from the mid-range line, but from the three-point line. And obviously, I would ramp up to that. So maybe I would start with form shots. Then I would go to elbows. Then I would, do free throws. Then I would do all 5 spots from the mid-range. And then I would do maybe the last 100 makes from the three-point line. That's just an example off the top of my head. And then as a bad defender, I would realize, well, defense is really just athleticism, speed workouts, turning your hips, pushing off your feet, and making sure you're getting, sliding and cutting off a defender. So we would have to build speed workouts for that. We'd have to do agility workouts. We'd have to obviously get stronger so that we can push off the ground harder. And so this is going through my head as I was a player back then. And so that's how I would structure it, right? If I'm just trying to get more athletic, I'm not just trying to lift weights. Well, no, I want to lift weights in a way that increases my speed to then be able to cut off people better, to change direction better, to use my hips better, to use my arm swings better, to really, after a closeout, I can swing and cut that guy off, right? All those stuff is going through my head as I'm building these workouts. And if I'm talking to trainers, I'm talking to my athletic trainer, my skill trainer, I'm talking, keeping an open line of communication with those people so that they know how to help me best. And so we can improve the most in the small 3 months that we have, because off season, as you guys know, it goes by really quickly, and we go from there. And so this is where development is just like the key point, right? Because we don't have the reason why June, July, August is so important is because high school players, we don't have school, so we can literally work out twice a day, maybe even 3 times a day, working on these weaknesses, working on getting stronger, getting more athletic. And so when you only have 2 or 3 weaknesses, and obviously maybe you have more, but you want to make it a point to really focus on, I'd say max 3 to 5 weaknesses, right? Okay, you want to get better as a shooter, you want to be a better defender, maybe you want to gain like 5 pounds, and maybe focus on those 3 things. And so then you would build your plan based on that. And so that's what was going through my head. I needed to fix everything, right? Like for me, going into my freshman year of high school, I know I needed to get quicker. I know I needed to improve my shot a lot. So like 200 makes a day, 6 days a week was a non-negotiable for me. But I would structure in a way that worked on all 3 types of shooting. So it would work on movement shooting. Let me move that up. Movement shooting. Off the dribble shooting, and spot up shooting. So we would be working on that constantly, right? We would be working on this all the time. So that when I went into the season or the preseason, I was more comfortable shooting off the movement, off the dribble, and spot up shooting. And so we would do this 60 to 90 minutes per workout, and that's the reason. That's like probably the biggest change, is really just working on that. That was the biggest difference between off season and all the other seasons, like preseason, season, and postseason. That's what all would change because you have more energy. So I'm gonna get into that in a second. In the preseason, you're practicing with your team, right? You're doing 2-hour practices, maybe even 3-hour practices if you're in college, because you lift before the practice or after the practice. You don't have as much energy. So you literally have to limit your workouts, especially in terms of time. So in the off season, it's a general rule of thumb that I used was in the off season, I would do 60 to 90 minutes per workout, depending on how much AAU I had, how much AAU games, practices, and obviously summer league and summer practices. I would limit it based on that. But for the most part, since I had no school, my brain was rested, I would just sit around all day. Besides, obviously, after my workouts or before my workouts, I would be resting, chilling. So my workouts would be 60 to 90 minutes in the off season. In the preseason, they would be about 45 to 60 minutes because I had 2-hour to 3-hour practices in high school and college, so I had to limit it. And so on a day, let's just say a Monday, I would have a practice for 2 hours. I would also work out again for 45 to 60 minutes. I would either do a lift or I would do more skill, depending on what I felt like I needed to work on that day. And then in season, you don't stop working out. You still have to lift. You still have to, do your skill, do your shooting workouts. But now, more than ever, you have game times, like prime games where you have to perform. So you would do 30 to 45 minutes per workout. That's what I would do. And then in the postseason, this is where, the season ends, you hopefully win the championship, you have to rest for at least 1 to 2 weeks, right? Your body needs recovery, do something else, go on vacation. And then after your 1 to 2 rest weeks are up, I don't like taking more than 1 to 2 weeks. I've heard people take, a month off, but it just depends on how grueling or how bad your injuries and pain are in your body. But if you're good, you're somewhat healthy still, then I think 1 to 2 weeks is fine. And then you ramp up again. So you don't go straight back into, this off season right here where you're doing 60 to 90 minutes per workout. No, you start at 30 to 45, do it for a week, maybe even 2 weeks. Then you increase it by maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then you finally get back into the 60 to 90 minute groove in June. And so you would start this kind of ramp up process in late April or beginning of May, and then go from there. So again, focus on in the off season, proving our weaknesses, getting stronger, more athletic, all that good stuff. And then in the preseason, we're talking about conditioning, we're working on our instinct, and we're just playing a lot. We got to be able to, have instinct and trust our instincts. When, let's just say, a defender cuts us off, we got to be able to counter like that. And all this stuff is ingrained in our head from the off season. If we're working on specific things like, hey, every time someone cut me off, I wasn't able to counter. Well, that should be in your workout program every single day if that was a big struggle for you, so that when preseason comes, you're not worried about that because you practice it for 3 months straight, 6 days a week. Well, now you have the instinct. It's just muscle memory at that point. Someone cuts you off, boom, you spin, or boom, you go change direction, crossover, whatever the case may be. And then conditioning is a big focus because you can't perform if you're tired, right? If you're gassed within the first 5 minutes of the game, well, you're not going to be good. So this is when I started doing interval training. So interval training is kind of like when you go on the track and you sprint for a lap and then you walk for a lap. And then also my high school team, we did something called hell runs. So what these were basically was you'd run about 2/3 of a mile, and then you would wait for about 4 to 5 minutes, and then you do it again. And then you have to sprint it though. You have to do it as fast as you can, and we would do it in teams. So we'd do it in teams of 4 or 5, and we would see which player would, or which team would compete the most. And obviously if you finish last, you get the least points. If you finish first, you get the most points. So you guys get the picture. But either way, interval training I think is the best for basketball players because it's kind of similar to the game where it's like you're sprinting and then you get a break. And you sprint and you get a break. Just doing miles or like 2-3 miles, just running straight, it's a little different and it didn't help me as much. So I like interval training where you're just like, you sprint for a lap, then walk for a lap. Sprint for a lap, walk for a lap. Do that 5-6 reps. You'll feel it. And then as you get better, instead of sprinting for 1 lap, you sprint for 2 laps and then walk for 1 lap. And then sprint for 2 laps, then walk for 1 lap, right? That's when you're really conditioned. And then obviously you're just playing a lot, right? You should be playing AAU if you're really serious about basketball. You should be playing against, the best players in your city, the best players that right? Try to play. If you're trying to go D1, you should be playing Division I basketball players, especially in the off season and the preseason. And then, but in the preseason, you're playing against more of your team. You're practicing with your team a lot more. That's why the off season is more about playing better players. Right? D1 or top high school players. So I had a trainer who he would have D1 players come out and we would be playing against them in the off season. And so this in the preseason, there's 45 to 60 minutes. The workouts are usually 45 to 60 minutes, and obviously you're still having your practice times. And then in the season, this is November, December, January, February, March. The focus is performing, maintaining, and staying healthy. And so the reason why we still want to work out during season is because all those gains that you made in the off season and the preseason, you don't want it to be affected by in season, because as you can see, it's usually the most. So season is by far the longest season, and you don't want to lose all those gains that you made in the off season and preseason in the season. So you still have to lift, because if you get super strong, let's just say you gain 5-10 pounds and you're super strong, super fast, super athletic in the off season and preseason, but then you lose it all from the season. Well, then you just go back into it, and then you're just making this complete cycle of, getting better, then getting worse, then getting better, then getting worse, right? You want to constantly keep going up. And so the way that I went about it was just I would still lift the same amount of weight. So for instance, if I set a PR for the off season or in the off season or the preseason for squats, right, or a deadlift. For a back squat, let's just say I do 265 for 5 reps, right, in the off season. That was pretty heavy for me. But then season comes, okay, instead of doing 265 for 5 reps, I want to do 225 for like 8 to 10 reps, because you have to stay conditioned, right? You want to still be able to stay strong, right? Or maybe even do 225 for 5 reps or 225 for 6 reps. You still want to stay in that strong area where you're going into the off season still strong, right? So that you can hit a different PR, right? Instead of doing 265 for 5 reps, maybe I'll do 275 or 285 for 5 reps on back squat. So you want to focus on maintaining that strength and, of course, staying healthy, right? Always doing ankle work, always rolling out, always doing your recovery processes, always making sure that you're eating right, all that stuff. And obviously performing, right? This is where the mental side comes in. You're going to have bad games. You're going to have bad practices. But are you going to stay the course? Are you going to stay locked in? Are you going to keep working out, right? Because for me, as soon as I stopped working out, I usually played worse. So I would want to stay in that consistent routine and stay locked in the whole way throughout the whole season, right? And ramping up almost, right? In November, December, I'm starting out, but I want to finish strong in January, February, March, which is where the playoffs happen and the big games happen. And then in the postseason, let's just say your season ends. Hopefully you're not injured or you're not in a lot of pain. But if you do, or if you have a lot of pain or you're injured, let's just say you sprain your ankle toward the end of the season. Well, now you got to recover, right? You got to recover and use that time, the 1 to 2 rest weeks, to not only recover, get stronger, but the biggest thing is planning. You got to plan to make sure that in the off season, in the preseason, that you're doing the proper stuff that you need to do to ramp up and to get to a new level, right? Like freshman year, after I finished my freshman year, I had to plan and see what I needed to do better. I averaged 5 points a game my freshman year, so going into my sophomore year, I had to think like, okay, well, what do I have to do? Number one, I have to get stronger for sure. So I was on a strict strength program to in the off season to get stronger. And then also I was on a strict skill program where I was like working on a lot of pick and roll because I was a point guard, and I was tall in middle school, so I didn't play a lot of point guard. So I needed to really work on those crafty skills that a lot of point guards had naturally, just playing a lot, that I didn't have. So like pick and roll stuff, a lot of crafty finishes, being able to kick out when the help side comes, working on those skills, and then always improving my shot. Improving my shot never stopped because, I wanted to shoot 50, 40, 90. So being able to shoot 40% from the three-point line, 50% from the field, working on my pull-ups specifically off of screens, off of, down screens, and all that stuff. And so this is the stuff that kind of went through my head as I was planning and all that stuff, so I could maximize my off-season and preseason, and so that I was ready for what was to come and to always perform. And so like the biggest thing though that a lot of players are going through is in the off season, they're so stacked with AAU and AAU practices and games that they're missing out on developing, and they don't have a specific program for what they need to do to get better. And so if you guys want, I do offer free custom programs and at least a free trial for the first week. So if you guys want, click the link in the description below, and I can help you out with that and to help you plan like I did before every single offseason and preseason, to maximize the time that you put in for the thing that you get out, right? So I hope you guys like this video. I was kind of just spitballing here, and I definitely need to get better at it and just trying to work on helping you guys with your seasons and your planning process, your mindset, being able to think the game and not just play the game, right? It's bigger than just going out and playing and playing the better players and playing pickup, right? You guys really have to sit down and ask yourselves, well, what do I have to get better at? What's holding me back? Is it because of my athleticism, or is it because of my skill set, or is it because I'm stubborn, or is it because of my mentality? Do I have to learn? Do I have to read more books, right? All this stuff is so important because this is the stuff that not everyone does, right? Everyone works out, everyone plays basketball, but are you the type of player to really, sit down and think about these things? Because if you prepare, the prepared never lose, but the unprepared, they just go out and wing it, right? And it's never going to be as good as if you sit down and planned everything. And of course, you got to be able to adapt to the plan, right? The first plan, sometimes doesn't work, right? But sometimes it does. So you just got to make sure that you're being aware of your actions, being aware of what's working, what's not working, and just always, it's a trial and error process of what is working and what is not working. Keep doing the things that are working. Don't do the things that are not working. Okay? Hope this helped, guys. Let me know in the comments what you guys want to see next, and so I can build a video off of that. And yeah, have a good one.